Greetings, everyone. I'll be here again to talk about the Georgia VGC Draft League. If you recall from last week, the Georgia VGC community started a draft competition amongst 12 of the local players, and they'll be using the Series 9 format to do their battles in. Now, if you don't recall that, that's the series where Crown Tundra DLC had released, but restricted Pokemon were not allowed just yet. This was just before the series where they allowed one restricted, but not two. But we're going all the way back. Now, week one of this series, this league has wrapped up. So we're going to move into week two, commencing battles later this week. But I kind of want to, touch back on the results that we've gotten from week one, and then see if we can make some predictions about week two. Now, just like last time, I did make a text document for this, so I'll put that in the link below. I'm going to encourage you to take a look at it, mainly because there are some trades that happened both before week one and after. I'm not going to touch on any of them, didn't want to spend too much time, but they're listed in that document, so you can kind of keep track of it. There'll also be a full list of the teams, the updated teams after the trades, so you can take a look at that. Make it for easier viewing. Also going to include timestamps in the video in case you need to skip ahead. And I'm also going to encourage you to check out the Georgia VGC YouTube channel, where the matches for the league are going to be uploaded, including the ones we're going to talk about here for week one. So with that out the way, let's go ahead and get started. Now, the first match that we are going to take a look at, I'm sorry I don't have any highlight reels. Again, check out the Georgia VGC YouTube channel. That one's uploaded there. Was Papa Shuckle versus Sanaito. And now, honestly, I'm kind of surprised by the results, because one of the key factors, the Colossal, was kind of a big deal. You wanted to kind of make sure that you outsped the Colossal, which this team had the tools to do so with the Talonflame. Whether it was using Gastrodon, which turns out was actually max speed Gastrodon to work well with the Tailwind, or using the power of a Regieleki, or even redirecting with a Moongus to then pick up a KO with the partner. There was an expectation that the Colossal wouldn't be able to get started before it could do anything. But if you take a look at the match, Sanaito just played it really well. Overall, there were some very key decision-making, some key switches that allowed him to reposition his units and get some key KOs over Papa Shuckle. The game did go to 3 games. There was a bit of a slip-up. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but me and a friend gave Sanaito an earful when we talked strategy after the game. Overall, he played it outstanding and managed to go ahead and pick up the win up against Papa Shuckle. Going to see what kind of adjustments they can make going into week 2. I'm thinking that they're underestimating the power of both the Urshifu on their team, on their draft, as well as the Darmanitan, which could easily pick up KOs if players aren't prepared, especially given the speed advantages that Talonflame allows them, whether it's through Galewind's Tailwind or Galewind's max Airstream. Once again, I got tack on that move still gets priority, so make sure you remember. Airstream plus move lets you double tap things pretty quickly, and sometimes people don't see it coming. Now, I also did want to point out one of the key things here that actually helps it out in the early stages of this match, the Barraskewda. Now, when you see Sanaito's full draft, there's a Politoed included, so there's kind of an expectation that it's carrying Swift Swim. But don't forget that it also gets Propeller Tail. So even though Gastrodon was there with Storm Drain to redirect any water moves, Propeller Tail allowed it to Aqua Jet the Colossal without being disrupted. So it's a good way to try and get the Colossal going at the beginning of the game. But most of this win is actually due to the Zapdos wreaking havoc in some of the later stages of the game. And actually a surprise win through Virizion at the on game 3. That one was actually pretty devastating for Papa Shuckle. Sanaito had led their Virizion alongside Zapdos. Papa Shuckle decided to max the Talonflame. Just like we discussed before, it can be a strong lead. Only to find out Sanaito had switched over to the Indeedee female, setting up the Psychic terrain. and that makes the Airstream fail because now it's priority. Got a quick KO off of that, and just positioned to a late game where the only things in the way were Gastrodon and Amoonguss, left to fend off against a Virizion, which just made quick work of them. So yeah, excellent job to Sanaito. Keep that energy going into week 2. Next match was... That one was a bit of a slog. It took a while to get through, but it's Professor Walnut versus Bazuk. Now, if you checked out the other video where I mentioned, Professor Walnut's draft is actually overall really cool, well thought out, but it was going to be frustrating for anyone playing against them to kind of chew through it. This one was no exception. Everything started out pretty good for Professor Walnut, picking up a game number 1, not too many issues. The Porygon Z is a very crucial aspect to the team. And also he was running a Choice Band Rillaboom, which was putting in a lot of damage that Bazuk had to kind of make up ground for. The key star in this entire affair, though, was the Arcanine from games 1 through 3, surprisingly. If you're watching the games in order, you'll notice that Bazuk had led the Whimsicott with the Arcanine immediately on turn 1. Not less peculiar, especially if they maxed the Arcanine as well. But if you're paying attention, there was no ability that activated, which means it's not carrying Intimidate. It could be Flash Fire, or it could be Justified. Considering there's a Whimsicott next to it, beat up was very likely. Now, didn't get to show it, because the fake out from the Sableye came in to stop the Whimsicott, while Porygon Z started to wreak havoc. But in games 2 and games 3, that's where Arcanine started to shine and pick up the KOs to end the game. Professor Walnut actually missed a crucial KO into the Whimsicott somewhere in game 2, allowing to switch out, switch back in, reposition Arcanine, and actually finally got the beat up into the Justified, and Arcanine could just clean up from there. Game 3 didn't get anything as cool as that. It was kind of a slobber knocker, as they say. But it still ended up with Arcanine finishing the game with a close combat into the Porygon Z to finish it off. All that was left to fend off against at the end was Sableye, and unfortunately for Professor Walnut, the only attack it had was Fake Out. Not enough to even think about coming back from that game. So well played to Bazuk. I do want to tack an eye on these guys going into next week. I think Bazuk has a lot of really cool offensive tools that they can use, but I also want to see how Professor Walnut makes some adjustments with this team, because one of the things that we kind of pinpointed was the lack of offense on their team. Like, of course, you have Porygon Z, a very powerful tool, and then you have Galar Moltres is kind of a conditional offensive tool. It does allow damage, but doesn't really get going until Berserk activates once it's below 50% health. Rillaboom is also a little bit conditional of offense. Like, it showed great prowess with the Choice Band that led into this team, but it's also it's not something that you really want to stick out there and it hits everything, right? It's something that, especially running a Choice Band, would be able to pick up some quick revenge KOs or put a lot of pressure on for the other offensive tool to really work its magic. But here he was kind of pigeonholed into relying heavily on Porygon Z, and he couldn't really get the Red Steel going in the late game like the initial plan was. But again, overall interesting teams. I do want to see if they can pick up some steam going into week 2. Next match we have is Luminary versus Strider. Now, not to speak bad on any of the players, but Strider winning this one was actually a bit of an expected result. One of the things I've kind of harped on for Luminary's team is the quote-unquote power level is a little bit low. Like, you see these strong monsters like Cinderace, Mudsdale, Conkeldurr. If they can land a hit, they'll do a lot of damage. But really the star as far as carrying the damage and being like a primary max tool is the Cinderace. And outside of Grimmsnarl, there's not a ton of support for it. the Conkeldurr and the Mudsdale, they got a lot of roadblocks to them. It's hard for them to really get set up, especially versus Strider's team, and you'll actually see that in play when you take a look at their match. Strider, on the other hand, has just a very streamlined Sun team. It's got like all the pieces that you would want. The Torkoal, the Charizard, the Venusaur, the Landorus all fit really well. Even the Rotom Wash helps you resolve any matchups that you may have some trouble with, particularly if you like ran into a Rain team or Rain strategy, for example. But it was very hard for Luminary to get anything going versus Torkoal Venusaur lead. Trying to respond with Tapu Fini and Alolan Persian to kind of slow down the special offense was unfortunately ineffective, and the Venusaur kind of steamrolled the team, or at least did enough chip damage that they were always ahead in their health pool for the entire team. And Strider could just really do whatever they want. They could cycle it and intimidate pressure for the Conkeldurr that was in the back. You could even see them kind of stalling with Fly while Vine last turns took their toll on the team. So it was a clean 2-0. Not much to really say other than it's a really strong Sun team. I want to see how far it can actually go with it being so streamlined. You don't have to put too much thought in what you want to take. You could honestly probably just take it week after week, make some small adjustments depending on the matchup, and not have to worry too much. Luminary, on the other hand, they have some cool pieces. The Grimmsnarl, Tapu Fini could help stall out the early game, but then you have to reposition strong offensive tools in the back to really tie everything together. Possibly looking even into a Trick Room strategy to support the Mudsdale or the Conkeldurr. There's even I'm not sure how well it'll work, but there's even a Cursula in the back to see if they can make use of that. But there's got to be a game plan. So far, we've just got the pieces on the board, just got to know how to move them right. Next up, taking a look at Esquire versus Patillac. This one's a weird one. I do want to give shout outs to Patillac here. I mentioned that I really did like this particular draft that they picked up. I think Urshifu and Celesteela in particular are just really strong and flexible tools to use in the format. But I didn't really harp on too much about the Gmax Cinderace. Just like I mentioned previously, Cinderace is a really cool tool, and I think probably one of the stronger mons in the format and in this draft league. I've also mentioned how, with it being a draft league, you want to have a lot of flexibility within your teams because you're running this kind of the same squad week after week, and you're playing against different types of compositions. So if you have just a single-minded game plan and you run up against the one thing that game plan doesn't want to see, then you're going to be kind of stuck. Cinderace, by virtue of having access to Libero, helps it a little bit kind of overcome that gap. You can mix and match moves however you want to address certain Pokemon within that group, and just run a general game plan, not have to worry too much about where your offense is going. It's got an answer for everything. Now on the other hand, Esquire, it's still a little bit tough to see their game plan. And you can see that playing out too in their match when you watch the video. Both matches really ended up the same. Game 1, Esquire led Lapras Gmax. Game 2, they led Kingdra. And both times, Cinderace maxed with Urshifu next to it, and they doubled up into the water Pokemon that it had just maxed, so they didn't get a chance to move at all. From there, Raikou had set up a Reflect. A new Pokemon came in, whether it was Dusclops or Aromatisse, and set up Trick Room, hopefully to get the Marowak going in the late game. Too much damage was done though, not enough health taken off in the early turns, so it was more than Marowak could really even cut through. And by that point, Cinderace is just still shredding through teams and has access to Sucker Punch, so couldn't really even touch that easily, even under Trick Room. So well played to Patillac. I do want to see what happens, when they come up against the stronger teams. For Esquire, they did make a couple of trades. The Dusclops was one of them, so I want to see how the dynamic changes moving on into later weeks, and kind of see a game plan come together to address different matchups. Alright, next up is one I was actually really excited about. This is Mocha versus Eeveenescence. Now it was a 2-1 in Mocha's favor, but it wasn't a complete stomp. This was actually a match here. We saw the hype game plan from Spectre using Bulldoze into the weakness policy Metagross, like we had expected. It didn't quite run over the team, but it did enough of a dent into Eeveenescence's team that it was difficult for them to come back, especially with Thundurus in the late game. This seemed to be a physical defiant Thundurus, but with no max available as the Gmax Cinescorch had already used it. Now they did make a really great adjustment going into game 2, leading Suicune and Umbreon versus the same lead, Spectre and Metagross. It seemed to kind of spook Mocha out, because if Metagross maxes and doesn't take out the Umbreon, it's subject to getting KO'd by the combination of Snarl, which would proc the weakness policy even if Spectre didn't, and then Foul Play to go ahead and KO the Metagross. To slow down the game enough to where Mocha decided to pivot into the Salamence. And overall, as it dragged out, Eeveenescence's team actually kind of snagged out the win. By the time they got to the Cinescorch, it was able to overpower the Swampert. Salamence was already chipped down, especially with Life Orb chip. And the Cinescorch was protected by Cobra Berry, even though it tried to Air Slash it. Turn by turn, just led slowly over the course of the battle to Eeveenescence grabbing up the win in game 2. In game 3, though, we just went for it. Same Bulldoze strategy. Only this time, we're kind of just going for the gusto here, picking up KOs left and right. Still kind of went down to the wire from what I recall. I'll have to take another look, but Mocha snags the win over that. Both teams really showing how flexible they can be. Mocha's in particular, showing that they don't have to rely on the quote-unquote cheese strat, and that they have viable pivots to go into. Even the Grimmsnarl showing that it has utility to help the team adapt to matchups, especially in a best of 3 in the later games in the series. Now, Eeveenescence's team, while they did kind of show their expertise in slowing the game down, the issue became, like I've echoed before, you can slow down the early game, but you still need to pivot into a strong offense in the late game. And the only ones they really truly had was with the Cinescorch. And its power is a little bit middling. You have to kind of rely on the chip damage from its Gmax move. And then Swampert getting KO'd by Max Overgrowth is the only thing where it can really pick up a one-hit KO. You can't really use the Sylveon to great effect just because Metagross is coming. Otherwise, that'd be like the other option. But in general, still overall, because these options are lacking coverage and in general power, the plan kind of falls apart near the end. So I do want to see where they make adjustments to give someone else just as much of a challenge. But really good series overall. All right, next up, this one was really interesting. Papi Cantan versus Bruneaux. I didn't mark it in the header, but Papi Cantan had won this one. It was, you hear me chuckling because game 1 was really fun and shows just what I'm talking about with wanting to be, flexible, versatile with these kinds of drafts, and use all your resources. Reason I say that, because I believe starting on turn 2, the Clefable, as the Togekiss is switching in, reveals that it has Power Herb and Meteor Beam, immediately knocking out the Togekiss. And from there, it uses the +1 Dynamaxes and essentially sweeps with just using Max Starfall. This is actually a really cool sight to see. Now some adjustments were made in game 2, where Bruneaux showing that they're no slouch either. They decided to lead Indeedee with the Togekiss and go for double spread move to get 2 really quick KOs early in the game. So Dazzling Gleam, I believe Dazzling Gleam had crit or the Expanding Force crit. One of them crit, but both were knocked out in a matter of seconds, and that just helped Bruneaux take control of the game and go ahead and snowball there. Game 3, however, it's back in Papi Cantan's hands. This one was it was a really back and forth between showing off some really cool strategies early on. This time they decided to lead Urshifu and Excadrill. And now the Urshifu is Choice Scarfed and it's using Coaching. So with the max Excadrill and Coaching, it immediately gets a +2 in defense and then a +1 in attack. And this would spam, through the entirety of the Dynamax. So by the time Excadrill ended the game, it was at +3 attack and +6 defense. Now keep in mind, one of the things that we learned earlier on in this set, they did bring the G-Max Blastoise, Bruneaux did, but it's a physical version, so even it had trouble trying to tear through all those defense boosts after not taking advantage of the type advantage early on. All things said, this would have been a clean sweep 4-0 if Excadrill had not knocked itself out due to Life Orb shit. Really cool stuff from Papi Cantan. I can't wait to see what they can do next. For Bruneau's team, I really did mention it during my analysis. I believe the Blastoise was going to have trouble showing a lot of use. Now, I kind of want to be proven otherwise. Maybe it was just this game going the physical route was not quite the best move. They probably wanted to take advantage of Max Quakes, I would assume, which they wouldn't get with a special version. But as far as doing damage to an overall team, which is generally physically bulky, the special version may have, paid more dividends. But we'll see what they do going into next week. Speaking of next week, on your screen is the week 2 matchups. So I do want to see if I can make some accurate predictions. We'll touch base next week and see how that comes out. First one being, I believe Bruneaux has Professor Walnut's number. It could go either way, as both teams make adjustments after what they've learned from this week. But I think one of the keys here, because Bruneaux can use Dragapult for a faster game, they can use really it's a combination of Dragapult and Togekiss, because as we discussed before, Professor Walnut, sometimes they feel a little bit pigeonholed into using the Porygon Z. But they decide to do that because of Dragapult's clear body. Even if they target the Togekiss, they won't be able to lower the Dragapult speed, in which case it can kind of do its own thing. Additionally, they won't be able to target it with Dark Pulse or Max Darkness, because the Togekiss is there with a potential Follow Me, which will then resist the Dark move, making it tricky for Professor Walnut to kind of maneuver into that. Now, to that point, they could use the Galarian Moltres to just bypass all that, take advantage of Fiery Wrath. But yeah, we'll see if they can get past the Trick Room option that Bruneaux has as well. That's one of the cool things. They can flex between using that Dragapult or using a slower mode to kind of throw them off. Alright, for Eeveenescence and Papa Shuckle, I think Papa Shuckle can take this one. I think Eeveenescence really showed how well that they could slow down a game, but again, one of the problems was even if they slow down the game, moving into the later part of the game, how strong of an offense can they put up from there? If it's not strong enough, Papa Shuckle can just take advantage of playing slow as well, but they have they have a lot more power to back them up. So unless Eeveenescence makes some adjustments or a couple of trades, I think Papa Shuckle can take this one, probably with some trouble. It'll take a while. I think it might go to game 3, but I think they've got the win. For Mocha and Papi Cantan, I think that it may be tough, and the only reason I say this, Mocha's draft is still as flexible as ever, so that's the one thing that I keep wanting to reiterate. Papi Cantan, though, did make a few trades going into this week. They picked up Kartana, Volcarona, and Single Strike Urshifu G-Max, so they got a cool little grass, water, or fire core going on. the Volcarona can help kind of insulate them versus the Metagross to pop off elsewhere potentially. We'll see. Mocha's just really well insulated versus like all types of threats. So even with these trades, Papi Cantan still got a lot of work to make it through that. But my money is on Mocha. Next match is going to be Sanaito versus Strider. Now, I'm gonna curse Sanaito a little bit and call the win on their side. I think his team has a natural advantage versus Strider. Not too much. If they decide to set it up, will resist the Colossal outright. They've got a lot of outs they can play into, such as AV, Landorus Therian, and even their Rotom Wash can probably withstand the storm and then KO the Colossal back. But they'll take a lot of chip damage in the process of doing so. But we'll see what happens, because if they activate the Steam Engine on Colossal, it'll easily outrun the Venusaur even in Sun. But even past that, Sanaito has a couple of tricks up their sleeve, even posing a threat with the with Rain to cancel out the Sun and then maneuver from there. Classic Rain versus Sun battle. We'll see how they do, but I'm siding with Sanaito here. For Patillac versus Luminary, just gonna go ahead and give it to Patillac. Luminary, unless they have made some adjustments, are going to run into the same kinds of issues, where you've got some of the units there, but it's not powerful enough to make a dent in the mini teams before they've taken off more than half your health already. I do want to see like some really cool strategies. They have Trick Room available on their team. They do have Butterfree on their team, which can use Rage Powder. They may be able to rely on that, but if not, they've really got to support their Cinderace. I believe they have access to Grimmsnarl. That's one way they can do it. But something's got to happen to show that their offense is something to be reckoned with. They got a couple of tools. It's just a matter of using it and seeing what comes out of that. And then the last team, last matchup rather, we're going to get into is Bazuk versus Esquire. Now, this one's going to be pretty weird. You saw Bazuk using Whimsicott and Arcanine, justified, but they can also use Whimsicott and Tyranitar. And those could easily just steamroll the team if they get it set up correctly. But one of the really crucial things is Esquire now just gave up the Rillaboom in one of the trades that they made, so it's going to be even tougher to address the Tyranitar with their team. So they're going to have to show that Kingdra or Lapras can do it on their own. Hopefully make an impact there. And I believe they had picked up, double check while I'm here. Yeah, they picked up a Crobat. So there's even potential that they might run a Tailwind variant and strategize from there. But we have to have a strategy, because the team itself doesn't seem to really have an identity. Now, again, check out the text document itself to see like a full lineup of the squad, so you can see exactly what I'm saying, kind of match it up to what I'm talking about. But those are my thoughts going into week 2. Again, we'll check back next week to see if any of my predictions were accurate, if I know what I'm talking about. But yeah, just keep an eye on the YouTube channel for Georgia VGC. Again, link in the description. Matches should be uploaded there. If you have any questions, comments, or just want to discuss what's going on here as far as strategy goes, leave a comment down. I'll be glad to respond. But until next time, thanks for watching, and peace.